Hey everyone, Judicial Watch President Tom Fitton here with our weekly update on social media. It's just been another awful week in terms of corruption and threats to the republic, frankly. We've had this violence here in Washington, D.C. by the radical left. We've had this coup against the what I would call democracy in the small sense of the word, at least the small letter D sense of the word, with the removal of Biden from the presidential campaign. Just an incredible development. But of course, Judicial Watch just never slows down. We have new lawsuits about the corruption involving Biden's continued presence in the Oval Office despite his cognitive disability, plus a new threat of a lawsuit. We've got a lot of work to do here in Oregon over their failure in that state to clean up the voting rolls as the law requires. So first up, obviously, or maybe not obviously, but first up is Joe Biden is no longer running for president. He was forced out as a result of a political party coup by Kamala, Obama, Pelosi, Schumer, et cetera. All the major Democratic Party leaders just threw democracy out the window. 14 million votes in a primary, or in the primaries to put Biden on the ticket, now are meaningless. And we're all supposed to believe it's perfectly normal and perfectly correct for Kamala Harris to be installed as the nominee. There'll be no primaries. And I was trying to think back, when was the last time that a party was able just to, through the convention process, install a nominee and exclusively? And I'm not quite sure exactly. I didn't figure it out date-wise, but certainly in the modern era, it's never happened before. So Kamala Harris is going to be, if the machine gets its way, the candidate for president for the Democratic Party without having obtained the vote of any individual American voter. And the left has lectured us on democracy. The left has lectured us on, how elections matter. And all of a sudden, those 14 million votes don't matter. And I can't imagine. It's not right. It's not, in my view, legal. Whether any court will do anything about it is another matter. But we're really in a crisis in terms of just losing all the hallmarks of our modern-day constitutional republic. And here's the statement I issued for Judicial Watch on it. Kind of talks about all the issues generally. President Biden's resignation from the presidential race is the result of a corrupt, arrogant, and anti-democratic process. Biden was forced to pull out of the presidential race as a result of a dangerously corrupt pressure campaign led by Obama, Pelosi, Schumer, and like-minded Democrats, which has effectively disenfranchised 14 million Americans who voted in the Democratic presidential primaries. Few Americans will buy the D.C. establishment's scheme to remove Biden from the presidential campaign over cognitive issues while ignoring his inability to serve as commander-in-chief. Kamala Harris, or is it Kamala? How am I supposed to pronounce it now? Because it changes. Is it Kamala or Kamala? I generally get confused about it. Vice President Harris, why don't I just stick with that? And the majority of the cabinet need to step up and invoke the 25th Amendment. And Congress should do an emergency investigation into Biden's fitness for office. The assassination attempt on former President Trump adds increased urgency to ensure we have a fully capable president. This is truly a national security crisis. So they just want to skip over all of this. And to make matters worse, we've had a coup against democracy, as the left likes to say. And of course, we're not going to know who the nominee officially of the Democratic Party is going to be until August. And it's election interference, pure and simple. There's nothing about this process that is normal, appropriate, or honest. You've been subject to some of the most significant psyop, gaslighting operations in modern American history the last week, telling you it's perfectly normal to remove Joe Biden from the ticket and just install, through just sheer power politics, another person to take his place. No primaries, no nothing. And a snap national primary or primaries to pick a new nominee would seem to be the most democratic approach to Biden's decision not to seek re-election. And at a minimum, a careful state-by-state and federal legal analysis is a necessary first step to help determine whether Biden can be replaced on the presidential ballot at this late stage in the presidential campaign. Judicial Watch is already investigating this election integrity issue, that the votes of 14 million Americans would be casually tossed aside by Democratic Party elites as a major corruption and election interference scandal. So that's the truth about what happened. You're not going to hear anything about that. Maybe you won't even hear too much from Republicans. They don't plan to do much of any of this. I've kind of highlighted a path forward for interested members of Congress to pursue, but they're going on vacation for the next 4 or 5, at least 4 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. Oh, wait, no, it's a district work period when the House goes into recess. You know, and the machine is operating. Initially, Obama withheld his support for Kamala, and just literally a few hours ago, they put up a silly video where Kamala is pretending to be surprised by a phone call from Barack Obama and Michelle, where his endorsement of her is announced. And as I highlighted earlier, the corrupt Obama machine has its fingerprints all over this coup against Joe Biden. Look at this video I put up about one of those minions for Obama and what he's up to.
Look at here. Notoriously corrupt Obama AG and pal Eric Holder, who was forced to resign from office in disgrace. You remember Fast and Furious, that Judicial Watch helped uncover. Will vet Kamala Harris's potential picks for VP. Well, there you have it, further confirmation. Obama's running the show in the coup against so-called democracy. 14 million voters who voted in the primaries, the Democratic Party primaries, their votes have been wiped out. It's now Politburo. Biden remains in office despite his inability to perform the duties of office. Terrible corruption. And as you see with Eric Holder's involvement for Obama, some of the worst people in Washington, corruption-wise, are running it.
Yeah, I was on the Hill earlier this week, and there's grave concern about Biden's fitness for office.
Hey everyone, I'm walking back from a meeting up on Capitol Hill. I can tell you there's grave concern on Capitol Hill about the constitutional and national security crisis caused by President Biden's inability to serve as president. It looks like folks like Speaker Johnson and other responsible government officials are going to have to step forward to reassure our friends and warn our allies that someone with their mental faculties is actually running the store. These are dangerous times for America. And I tell you, let your members of Congress know that they need to step up as well and do their jobs. It's more important than ever.
So you got the corrupt Obama gang basically eliminating Joe Biden from the political chessboard. As you can see with Eric Holder, the corrupt Attorney General, Obama's buddy and pal, quote, vetting, essentially picking the vice presidential pick for Kamala Harris. And no one's running the store. We're supposed to pretend it's normal. I mean, the Wall Street Journal had an editorial the other day. Typically, I like the Journal editorials. They're a little bit ridiculously anti-Trump or anti-populist, I would think is the better way of putting it in some ways. But they were saying, oh, it's good to leave, but we should just leave Biden in office. We've been running as a committee anyway, the foreign policy of the country. It doesn't matter if it continues to run as a committee in the future. Well, I mean, that might be technically true that it's been run as a committee, but that's an abomination unto our constitutional republic. That's not the way it's supposed to work in our republic. The president's supposed to be running the show. And if he can't do it because of cognitive disability, he needs to be removed. And I'm not convinced this whole process is legal in terms of the installation of Kamala Harris. I'm not convinced that those 14 million votes can be just thrown out with no check in place. I'm not convinced. And that's why I said we're going to be doing this serious investigation. I was on Maria Bartiromo's show earlier this week talking about these and other issues. Let's bring that up.
Judicial Watch has said, quote, at a minimum, a careful state-by-state and federal legal analysis is necessary as a first step to help determine whether Biden can be replaced on the presidential ballot at this late stage in the presidential campaign. Judicial Watch is already investigating this election integrity issue, Tom. What's your take there in terms of a fair election come November?
Well, in many ways, this election's already been compromised in the sense of targeting Trump, holding him hostage up in New York for 6 weeks during that kangaroo court proceeding. And here you've got the primary process, again, that involves the civil rights of 14 million Americans that's essentially been rigged. Why don't the Democrats run a snap primary in August? The United Kingdom did a snap election. Certainly they can figure out a way to have voters have a say here. And frankly, the best legal approach would be to admit that there was a cognitive issue that required Biden to leave.
Yeah.
But of course, that would mean he'd have to leave the presidency because, it's that sort of act of God. Either, someone has a disability or or dies. Obviously, there's going to be a little bit more flexibility in terms of replacing the person on the ballot. Here, it's just purely political. And I think it's like 25, 26 states, they don't even mention how to remove someone from the ballot. They don't really contemplate this. And to me, that's where the courts may have an interest in figuring out, well, what do the votes of the people who participated mean? If it means nothing, then, was there civil rights violations? And I would strictly enforce the law to require Biden to be on the ballot. But, we're all supposed to just move along, right? Someone gets nearly assassinated, Secret Service head resigns, move along. Trump gets prosecuted illicitly, move along. The election gets rigged through this primary coup, move along. I don't want to move along, and the American people don't want to move along. As I watch myself on TV, what occurs to me is I know why the left hates us. And because what I said is perfectly reasonable and sensible. And there are so few voices that take this Judicial Watch approach to these cutting-edge issues. And so when there is truth, the left gets angry. And that's why they attack Judicial Watch so much. That's why they're obsessed with attacking me and mocking Judicial Watch, mocking me, rather than dealing with the truth I put out there. That this is a house of cards, the emperor has no clothes, and our republic and the rights of millions of Americans are just being violated and eviscerated, and we're all supposed to pretend it's not happening. And our friends at the Heritage Foundation have analyzed this, and you can be sure that we're going to be taking a look at this, and I hope the Trump campaign takes a look at this as well. I mean, there was a case, for instance, back, I think it was in 2006, a circuit court of appeals, an appellate court, found that the Democratic Party had standing to challenge the removal of a key Republican leader at the time, Tom DeLay, who was I think he was House Majority Leader at the time, maybe. But, one of the national Republican House leaders. He had to be removed from the ballot because he was either, I forget what the circumstances were. He was either stepping aside, resigned, or it doesn't really matter. But the point was, they tried to remove him from the ballot, and the party had standing to challenge it. So there's nothing like this that's ever happened before. The only comparable, at least in modern history, is Lyndon Johnson declining to run in 1968. Well, the challenge with Johnson was it was a political challenge he faced. He didn't have a cognitive issue that prevented him from running. And so Kamala Harris can't have her cake and eat it too. You can't involve yourself in a coup against the president to remove him from the head of the ticket and pretend that there shouldn't be a follow-up in terms of his ability to serve as president. And I've suggested to Congress that they haul in every cabinet official and question them about this. You can invite Kamala Harris. I think constitutionally it's going to be hard to get her in. But this is a real crisis. And practically speaking, under the 25th Amendment, unless there's political pressure just to have Biden resign from office, and that it happens that way, like they did. By the way, the coup involved threatening to invoke the 25th Amendment against Biden to get him to pull back. That was what the New York Post reported. But the 25th Amendment requires the cooperation of the majority of the Biden cabinet, the vice president, and 2/3 of both houses of Congress. So it's necessarily bipartisan. And I think the concern about Joe Biden is necessarily bipartisan. And that concern is being muted because it's politically inconvenient for the Democrats right now. Because the question about Kamala Harris now is what she knew and when about Joe Biden's cognitive disability that required him to leave the campaign. I mean, so for 6 months, the country's not going to be protected? That's unacceptable to me. So what did Congress do? They went on vacation. That's the situation we're in. The president is nearly killed. They go on vacation. I mean, look at this testimony from Wray, further documenting the insanity of the collapse of security around former President Trump.
Director, let me go back to where Mr. Bishop was. Tell me about the drone. You act like you wanted to fill us in on that. Fill us in.
So we have recovered a drone that the shooter appears to have used. It's being exploited and analyzed by the FBI lab. The drone was recovered in his vehicle. So at the time of the shooting, the drone was in his vehicle with the controller. In addition, our investigation has uncovered.
Do you know what time of day he flew it, and if he flew it on the day of the shot?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So in addition, it appears that around 3:50 p.m., 4 o'clock in that window, on the day of the shooting, that the shooter was flying the drone around the area
2 hours.
For about 11 minutes. I want to be clear, but when I say the area, not over the stage and that part of the area itself, but I would say about 200 yards, give or take, away from that. We think, but we do not know. So again, this is one of these things that's qualified because of our ongoing review, that he was live streaming, viewing the footage from that, again, about 11 minutes in around the 3:50, 4 o'clock p.m. range.
2 hours before, he's flying a drone in the vicinity of the route.
About 200 yards away, yeah.
I mean, the other big news is the Secret Service chief resigned after her disastrous hearing before Congress on Monday. where she just essentially refused to provide any information about anything related to the assassination attempt. I mean, I found myself agreeing with the AOC, the left-wing communist congressman. She doesn't call herself a communist. I think she is. But she was absolutely right. She said, we can't wait months for a report on this. This is an emergency. We may have to pass emergency legislation. She's right. So Congress went on vacation instead. And there you have the FBI director describing a more complex and significant and successful recon operation than the Secret Service had, a $3 billion agency. The shooter had a drone up 2 hours or so, 2.5 hours before, in a secure environment before President Trump arrives and speaks. I mean, reportedly there was a drone that was offered from the locals to the Secret Service. They said, oh, no, we got it covered. According to a whistleblower, the night before the rally, U.S. Secret Service repeatedly denied offers from a local law enforcement partner to utilize drone technology. And of course, the U.S. Secret Service, they have their own drone technology. They didn't need anyone's help. But it just further highlights the collapse of the Secret Service security. According to Ray, also, the shooter had been there I think 3 times the day of the shooting. He was there in the morning and then visited later and then obviously came back to shoot. And he got 8 shots off. 8 shots before the Secret Service sniper took him out. And the fact that roof wasn't covered, wasn't secure, to me tells me that shows the Secret Service is incapable of doing its core duty. I mean, and then of course the video is so damning, suggesting other issues with the way the Secret Service runs its operation. Let's watch this video. I kind of commented on it in real time. Watch.
Incredible video of Trump being removed by the Secret Service from the area where he just miraculously survived a shooting. Agents heroically defending his life with their bodies, all heroes. Of course, there are serious questions about some of those agents, whether they had the height, abilities, etc., to defend him adequately if things further had hit the fan. I also don't like how slowly they got him away from the area. I mean, you could see just frustratingly slow there, in my view. This is why Judicial Watch is conducting its own independent investigation. We have 20 FOIAs out there. We don't trust the FBI or the Secret Service or the deep state or the Biden administration or Congress to do any of this. We're going to do the heavy lifting on our own.
I mean, look at that. And of course, those agents who were trying to do their job, it's to a degree there was confusion or seeming inability to do work, seeming breakdown in some of the training. I mean, that's systemic, right? They talk about systemic racism. Well, there's systemic incompetence in too many of our government agencies. That's the real problem. And is there like a DEI component of this? We're going to find out. I think it's now 25 FOIAs. We've got FOIAs to the FBI, Secret Service, all the local and state authorities up in Pennsylvania. The FBI can't be trusted. I mean, look at what Ray started pretending that it was credible that Trump wasn't even shot.
I think with respect to former President Trump, there's some question about whether or not it's a bullet or shrapnel that hit his ear. So it's conceivable, although as I sit here right now, I don't know whether that bullet in addition to, causing the grazing, could have also landed somewhere else. But I believe we've accounted for all of the shots in the cartridges. So let us.
Shrapnel? Shrapnel from what? It's absurd, and the fact that the FBI director mentioned it highlights why the agency can't be trusted. I don't even think to investigate a jaywalking case, let alone a politically sensitive issue like this. And Trump rightly responded. FBI Director Chris Wray told Congress yesterday that he wasn't sure if I was hit by shrapnel glass or a bullet. The FBI never even checked, he said. But he was sure that crooked Joe Biden was physically and cognitively uneventful. Wrong! That's why he knows nothing about the terrorists and other criminals pouring into our country at record levels. His only focus is in destroying J6 patriots. And he goes further. No, it was unfortunately a bullet that hit my ear and hit it hard. There was no glass, there was no shrapnel. The hospital called it a bullet wound to the ear. And that's what it was. No wonder the once storied FBI has lost the confidence of America. So the political comments aside there, what the heck is, this is the new absurd conspiracy theory. First it's now Russia, 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 and now the left, with the help of the FBI Biden leadership, Trump wasn't really shot. We all watched him get shot. Oh, you've seen Biden be unable to essentially operate in a way to suggest that he's cognitively fit, and we were told, oh no, you didn't see what you just saw. Same thing with the bullet. You didn't see Trump get shot by a bullet. You misunderstood it. That's what the FBI is suggesting. So there are a few issues here. We've got a disabled president unable to fulfill his duties as commander-in-chief. We have a Congress that's AWOL. We have a coup against democracy, the destruction of 14 million votes, and Judicial Watch is investigating it all. We have the former president of the United States nearly murdered as a result of incompetence by the Biden Secret Service. And I'm just saying it's incompetence. Others are rightly raising the question about whether the failure to provide necessary support and personnel was a political choice. And we already know that there are political choices in deployment of protection by the Biden Secret Service. They refused to provide it for RFK Jr. Remember, they refused to provide it for Joe Biden's granddaughter because Hunter Biden, the father, was in a custody dispute or a payment dispute about taking care of his daughter. So they were willing to put this little kid's life on the line because they were embarrassed about Hunter fathering the child. Don't tell me politics. It's impossible to be one of the reasons for the failure to provide protection for Trump. I mean, it was confirmed earlier this week that the Secret Service was, to put it charitably, falsely denying, to put it directly, lying, when they said they've never denied requests for additional Secret Service support from the Trump people. They've done it repeatedly. The Secret Service confirmed it and had to walk back their earlier denials. Man, I'm so mad I don't even know what to say next. Well, this is what I love about Judicial Watch. I get mad. I get upset about things the way you do. And the great thing about Judicial Watch is we're able to focus our concerns and our upsettedness through education, litigation, and investigation. So we're able to be upset about something and say, what is it we're going to do about it? And so we've got 25 Freedom of Information Act requests. We are pushing on all of these issues related to the 25th Amendment. we're investigating Kamala Harris. Because normally there's a primary process for this information about her background to come out. That's gone. So this senior government official wants to be the president of the United States through a coup against the primary system. Well, in the ordinary course, we get some more information from even her campaign opponents. We're not getting that. So Judicial Watch, once again, has to do the heavy lifting. From her days in California to what she did as a senator. I'm trying to think, the only time I saw, or I recall seeing Kamala Harris in person was during those awful Kavanaugh hearings. And especially the hearing when he was smeared with fake rape allegations. And he emotionally rejected them and defended his honor. And if you may remember, I was sitting there in the room. So it was a small room. And I do remember Kamala Harris because it struck me, her odd behavior in that hearing. Sitting there smirking through the entire process. Just smirking. It was very odd. And it was like during very emotional periods. I mean, it was an extremely intense period, intense hearing. It was the most intense public policy experience I've ever really been through. The drama and tension in the room was really palpable. And Kamala Harris was sitting there kind of smirking and weirdly smiling the entire time. And it was, like I said, because I didn't really know who she really was.
Can you think of any laws that give government the power to make decisions about the male body?
Smirk on her face. So anyway, I digress a little bit.
I'm happy to.
That's my only Kamala Harris story I have in terms of seeing her in person that I can remember. But Judicial Watch is going to be doing all of this work, and because on the future of our republic, sadly, it looks like we may be the only ones doing it. I mean, a few other groups are going to be working on it, our Friends of Heritage. I'm sure some individual members of Congress are going to ignore the zeitgeist here in Washington, D.C. and just keep on telling the truth about what's happening. And maybe some independent state's attorney general will take a look at these issues about the primary ballots and such. But if I were the Trump team, I would make it an open question about whether this process is licit, L-I-C-I-T, in terms of replacing Biden on the ballot. And as I said on Maria's show, strictly enforce the law that I think it could be fairly interpreted that they can't do what they propose to do without significant civil rights violations and voting rights violations. So come back here often for updates as events warrant. The other big issue this week was the visit of Benjamin Netanyahu to speak to Congress, a joint session of Congress that the radical left tried to disrupt. Kamala Harris boycotted his address, even though she was president of the Senate. And the communist left showed up to try to destroy the city. Beat up cops, engage in violence. That's what they do. My colleague took some of these pictures here. Look at this. Capitol Hill was shut down, essentially. It's just that this is just a block or two from the U.S. Capitol here. Chaos and anarchy. And it isn't just, they call it First Amendment demonstrations and telling people streets are going to be shut down. Look at this video. Attacking the police with water bottles. Is that a First Amendment right? To assault police officers? There you go. Other reports are that they threw feces at police. And then there was an attack up on, so Union Station is the major train station for Washington, D.C. It's a major transportation hub. And there was a focus there. There's a wonderful Christopher Columbus statue. There's a kind of a version of the Liberty Bell. I think it's called the Freedom Bell that the American Legion installed. So it's really historic, and plus it's an historic place. And so the left engaged in violence. They tore a flag down, burned it, etc. This is my initial reaction to some of the violence on Instagram the other day.
Is this an insurrection? Left-wing terror supporters shutting down the Capitol? Is the Biden administration going to prosecute them to the hilt like they did the January 6ers? Of course not. They've been rampaging across the nation supporting Hamas terrorism for the last year, vicious anti-American protests, inherently violent, targeting Jewish Americans, targeting other citizens, shutting down cities, shutting down campuses, terrorizing the populace. No pushback from the Biden administration. In fact, they're seeking their votes and support. Supporting Hamas terrorists abroad who are murdering Americans, murder Jews, holding Americans hostage. Outrageous. Well, here you see we're on Capitol Hill overlooking the U.S. Capitol there. Very unusual sight, helicopters flying around the Capitol. I don't remember seeing it before, and I've been in Washington for decades. The left has been rampaging. The pro-terrorist left have invaded our nation's capital. Just a few blocks from the U.S. Capitol. The streets are completely closed off because these are not, quote, First Amendment demonstrations. These are designed to encourage violence and, if necessary, abuse the police. And there's no doubt about it. These people have been across the country rampaging, as I've been noting. The Biden administration obviously has been treating them.
And here's the video I promised of the assaults on the police and the burning in front of, burning the American flag. Look at that. "29 park police officers, according to the union, deployed against tens of thousands of these people that were expected to be in town. The group's notorious for engaging in violence and destruction of property." And look at those poor guys. Do you think the January 6th type style investigations will be targeting them? I doubt it. That's not what the Biden administration does. Remember, the Obama way is to protect your friends, punish your enemies. These are the friends of the Biden administration. Look at the flag burning that took place. It's an American flag. Now, technically, you can burn an American flag. You can't burn an American flag that isn't your property. I don't think the Constitution allows you to burn an American flag. It should be prohibited, to be clear, but the Supreme Court, in a split decision, found otherwise. But certainly a flag that isn't yours, you can't burn. No cops there. I mean, I tell you, these folks want to destroy America. and they're willing to burn an American flag is spitting on the graves of Americans who died for that flag. And it's no surprise they support terrorists who murder Americans, these communists. And so this is the big question. Why it is these groups have engaged in these national demonstrations coordinated with foreign governments, according to the Biden White House. I mean, if Judicial Watch were sponsoring demonstrations that always resulted in violence and arrest, do you think that we would not be subject to criminal investigation? Of course we would, and rightly so. Who's sponsoring these groups? How is this? Where's the conspiracy? Where's the sedition? Where's the insurrection prosecutions that they use to target Trump supporters? And you can bet this is going to continue throughout the rest of the summer and up through and after the election. For the left is violence. For the left is a core value. It's part of their toolbox. And the leftist politicians, who in theory should know better, always excuse it and condone it. So the next time you hear anyone complain about democracy from the left, about January 6th from the left, just remember, they don't really believe anything they're saying. Otherwise, they wouldn't be so bold as to pretend to be concerned about it while justifying and ignoring the conduct by their compatriots and comrades. So, Judicial Watch, to move on to the next topic, which is the integrity of our elections, is a national leader in protecting the integrity of our elections, ensuring the elections are as fair and clean as possible within our capacity. And I just did a video, coincidentally, the other day, talking about some of our work.
Hey everyone, Judicial Watch has major lawsuits ongoing in federal court against Illinois and California to clean up the voting rolls in those states. Millions of names are at issue, and of course we're not only fighting the states, but the extremist left that, for whatever reason, wants dirty voting rolls. Support our work. We've got more litigation coming as well. We can't do enough in terms of heavy lifting to ensure clean and fair elections.
As I said, more is coming, and I kept the promise, or my colleagues in the election law section of Judicial Watch did, by warning Oregon that we would sue them unless the state cleaned up the rolls as federal law requires. And Oregon's voting rolls are a mess. As I noted, we already have lawsuits that could impact millions of names in terms of ultimate removal in Illinois and California. And Oregon's rolls are a mess as well. And under the law, we're supposed to give them warning before we sue. And so we sent them the warning letter, and I want to read from it because it's educational, because it explains what the law is and what needs to be done, not only in Oregon, but maybe in your state and locality. Dear Secretary Griffin Valde, who is the Secretary of State of Oregon, I write on behalf of Judicial Watch, the Constitution Party of Oregon, and SUNY Danforth to notify you that your office is currently in violation of Section 8 of the National Voter Registration Act. We write to you as Oregon's Chief State Elections Officer, responsible for coordinating Oregon's compliance with Section 8 of the MVRA. This letter serves as a pre-suit notice pursuant to the law that Judicial Watch and our clients will file a lawsuit against you if these violations are not corrected within 20 days. As you are no doubt aware, the MVRA was intended, quote, to increase the number of eligible citizens who register, unquote, and to protect the integrity of the electoral process, and, quote, to ensure that accurate and current voter registration rolls are maintained, close quote. The goal of ensuring election integrity was embodied in Section 8, which requires each state to conduct a general program that makes a reasonable effort to remove the names of ineligible voters from official lists of eligible voters by reasons of the death of the registrant or a change in the residence of the registrant. Meaning if someone dies or moves away, you got to try to figure out how to track that and remove their names from the rolls. It's simple. And the fact it's not being done is really inexcusable in this day and age. That's not in the letter, but that's what I think. The registration of a voter who may have moved may only be canceled in one of two ways. First, it is canceled if the registrant confirms a change of address in writing. Second, if the registrant has sent a postage, prepaid, pre-addressed, forwardable notice requesting address confirmation. The confirmation notice fails to respond to it and then fails to vote in the next two general elections, that registration must be canceled. So I want to pause there. So what the letter is saying and what the law requires, it's really simple. If you don't vote in a federal election, you're supposed to get a postcard. And the postcard should say, hey, we missed you. You didn't vote. Are you still there? I'm paraphrasing. And if you don't respond to that postcard saying, I'm still here, or otherwise vote in the next two federal elections, your name's removed. Simple. And that could take, 4 or 5 years. I mean, two federal elections, plus the prior election, maybe 6 years, as long as 6 years. So the idea they can't get their act together to do that simple list maintenance is just unbelievable. And that's why we've had great success in the past in either lawsuits or the threatening of lawsuits in getting jurisdictions to clean up the rolls. I mean, just in the last year or two, Judicial Watch has gotten or caused the removal of 4 million names from the voting rolls. 4 million. That's a big percentage of the total voter registration population in the United States. That's just in the last year or two. Going back to the letter. Registrants who have failed to respond to a confirmation notice and whose registrations will be canceled after the statutory waiting period are said to be, quote, inactive. However, inactive registrations may still be voted on Election Day. And that's another little thing they hide behind. They say, oh, well, they didn't vote, but they're inactive, and don't worry about it. Because we don't necessarily treat inactive voters the way we do active registered voters. Well, that doesn't matter because they can all show up and vote. And the danger is that the names of people who have moved away or otherwise aren't able to vote or ineligible to vote are a pool of names from which fraudsters can vote. That's why you're supposed to have clean names. That's why you're supposed to have clean lists. I mean, it's not rocket science. And the MVRA also contains a public records provision. And this is a provision any citizen can use, by the way. So take note. Section 8I requires that each state shall maintain for at least 2 years and shall make available for public inspection all records concerning the implementation of programs and activities conducted for the purpose of ensuring the accuracy and currency of official lists of eligible voters. So you can ask your state or county or jurisdiction of that has that runs these voter programs, voter registration programs, and list maintenance activities for records about what they're doing in terms of ensuring the rolls are clean. That provision goes on to specifically provide that the records maintained shall include the lists of the names and addresses of all persons to whom address confirmation notices are sent and information concerning whether or not such person has responded to the notice. Federal law also requires the Election Assistance Commission, which is a federal agency, to submit a report to Congress every second year assessing the impact of the MVRA on the administration of federal elections during the preceding 2 years. Federal regulations require you, Oregon, to provide data to the EAC for use in this report, specifically including the total number of registrants statewide. I was using the screen to read, that were considered inactive at the close of the most recent federal general election. The EAC posted the most recent survey it sent to the states to elicit their responses for its biennial report. On June 20, 2023, the EAC published the data it received from the states, including your state, in response to this survey for the reporting period from November 20 through to November 2022. So what does that all mean? It means you're supposed to make the documents public, and you're supposed to tell this federal agency what you've done to clean up the rolls. And what Judicial Watch does is we look at that data very carefully to see that you're doing what you're supposed to do under law. The states should be doing what they should be doing under law, and the counties, obviously, within the states. And that's where issues arise. And that's where they arose here. In the next section of the letter, facts showing violations of the list maintenance provisions of the MVRA. According to your state's responses to the EAC survey, 19 Oregon counties reported removing 0 voter registrations from November 2020 to November 2022 pursuant to that section of the MVRA for failing to respond to a confirmation notice and failing to vote in 2 federal consecutive general elections. Another 10 counties reported just a handful of such removals during the same 2-year period. Furthermore, not a single one of Oregon's 36 counties reported any data whatsoever to the EAC regarding inactive registrations. Instead, in the relevant column and where the data should have been, the survey response for each of Oregon's counties merely stated data not available. So think about that for a minute. So you had a bunch of counties who have not removed any names under this process, and a bunch more counties who don't know what they've done. They didn't report any information. So 0 or we don't know. Well, that means they're not doing what they're supposed to do under the law. Hence our warning letter. And we wrote to them on August 24th, 2023, pointing out these facts and asking you to confirm the data contained in the EAC's report and to provide the data that was omitted. So we're giving them another chance. And we also asked for records under this public records section of the MVRA. On September 15th, your office responded by means of an email which treated our factual inquiries about the aforementioned county data as requests for public records. Neither the person who sent us the email nor anyone within your office ever provided any substantive response to our request. Both common sense and Judicial Watch's enforcement experience, which, as I note, is significant and incomparable nationally, that there is no possible way Oregon has complied with the law, mainly the key NVRA provision dealing with voters who change residence, when 28 of its 36 counties either removed no or just a few registrations under that provision during the past 2 reporting years, and when all 36 of its counties failed to report any data regarding inactive registrations. These facts show that Oregon is not complying with its list maintenance obligations to, quote, conduct a general program that makes a reasonable effort to remove the names, unquote, of voters who have moved or died. Again, we're not asking for all sorts of things. We just want them to do it doesn't even have to be perfect. You can miss a name or here and there. We understand that's the case. But if you're not removing any names, it means you're completely outside the law. And that's why we don't send these letters without having a real good understanding and concern about the failures to remove the names. I mean, some states you might think, well, you know, they may not be doing exactly everything they're supposed to be doing, but it's not enough to kind of trigger a lawsuit. You may kind of yell a little bit about it. Here, I mean, this is going to be a lawsuit if they don't get their act together. And this is another interesting fact. Oregon's noncompliance with the law is further illustrated by the unusually high registration rates observed in several of its counties. Comparing the data your state reported to the EAC regarding the total registration of each county to the U.S. Census Bureau's most recent 5-year estimate of the numbers of resident citizens over the age of 18 suggests that 8 Oregon counties have more voter registrations than citizens of voting age. Several federal courts have determined that such high registration rates are sufficient grounds for alleging a failure to comply with the requirement to make reasonable efforts to remove names by reason of death or change of address. And we've long experienced, we go on, you know, after saying you need to get back to us, with list maintenance litigation and are well aware of the practical difficulties jurisdictions face in trying to maintain their voter rolls. We're always glad to avoid costly litigation and to amicably resolve disputes. Please contact us if you have any questions. And Bob Popper, who is our lead election lawyer, former Justice Department official, senior civil rights litigator, signed the letter for us on behalf of Judicial Watch and our clients. I mean, the point is, we don't want to sue if just telling them that there's a problem will get the records cleaned up. And I love that fact about having people on the rolls in numbers that are over the number of people eligible to vote. So this is, again, the simple explanation, or at least I think is a simple explanation. If you have a list of voters, and that list has more people on it than are actually living there and eligible to vote, that's a pretty good indication you're not maintaining the list properly. It means you've got extra names. Simple. And as I said, we've got this tremendous record of getting voter rolls cleaned up. California, we've got new litigation in California, but we had prior litigation in California that caused the county of Los Angeles in our settlement to remove, was it 1.2 million names from the rolls? I think it was just last year. New York City removed 440,000 names from the rolls after we called them out on it. Here in D.C., they removed 138,000 names from the rolls. Pennsylvania cleaned up their rolls. North Carolina cleaned up their rolls. Kentucky, there was a consent decree. They cleaned up their rolls. Colorado cleaned up their rolls. And now we have a case in Illinois to clean up their rolls. We know what we're doing, and we know enough about the law, and we're expert in analyzing data here, and our expertise has been acknowledged by the courts to know there's something going on in Oregon. So who knows what will happen? Maybe they'll just say, Judicial Watch, you're right. We'll clean up the rolls, and we won't have to sue. Or we'll sue and they'll settle or something like that. But we'll see. Again, we're supposed to ignore election integrity. I know the left doesn't want to talk about election integrity. We're not going to ignore it. We're going to go to court over it. We're already in court. We've got 2 federal court cases to clean up election rolls in Illinois and California. We have 2 more cases to stop the counting of ballots after Election Day. Illinois, they count ballots that arrive for 14 days after Election Day. including ballots that aren't postmarked. Mississippi, 5 days. I think it's 9 or 19 other states have similar laws. California, I think they count ballots that arrive for up to 7 days after the election. I mean, first of all, it's illegal, at least for our understanding, is under straightforward federal law. Election day is election day. And talk about like providing an opportunity for voter fraud and undermining confidence in elections, counting ballots that arrive after the polls close. So we're going to do the heavy lifting in the run-up to the election. We're going to do the heavy lifting after the election. And for as long as it takes to ensure that these failures, numerous failures to clean up the election rolls are addressed, that regulations that allow the counting of ballots outside the lawful time are thrown out, but we're just going to keep on fighting for clean elections. And we're going to oppose regulations that undermine clean elections in a way that's inappropriate or illicit. We're just never going to stop. So what's next? One of the big issues remaining, as I noted earlier in this update, is the questions about Joe Biden's cognitive ability. Now, as you recall from the special counsel investigation into his theft of classified information from the Senate and his taking of classified information as vice president, they declined to prosecute him while still prosecuting Trump because Biden, according to special counsel Hur, H-U-R, had, quote, a poor memory and no jury would ever convict him. Isn't that a convenient out for not prosecuting him? And Judicial Watch sued for the transcript and audios of Hur's interviews with Biden that led to this conclusion, or so he told us. They released the transcript, but they didn't release the audios. And they've been hiding the audios from us, and we're in court now suing for them. And when the transcripts were released, many people suggested that they weren't accurate. And guess what? Judicial Watch forced the Justice Department to admit they weren't accurate. And we followed up this week with 3 federal lawsuits. In addition to the one for the audio of Biden's hearing, of Biden's interviews, we want to know about the effort to alter the transcript and mess with the transcript. And the pressure campaign by the White House and his lawyers, Biden's personal lawyers, to get him to remove the commentary about his memory. And we want the background information on Hur's investigation. Here's the headline. Judicial Watch sues Justice Department for communications with Biden White House regarding edited transcripts of special counsel interviews. In his report, Hur called, his special counsel report, Hur called Biden, quote, a well-meaning elderly man with a poor memory. We have considered that at trial, Mr. Biden would likely present himself to a jury, as he did during our interviews of him, as a sympathetic, well-meaning elderly man with a poor memory. Based on our direct interactions with and observations of him, he is someone for whom many jurors will want to identify reasonable doubt. It would be difficult to convince a jury that they should convict him. That's why they didn't prosecute him, or so they say. To me, it was an excuse rather than a reason. But the left was desperate, and the Biden people were desperate to get that memory thing out of there. And as I note in the press release, or we note in the press release, prior to the finalization of the report the special counsel issued, the White House issued a letter to the special counsel's office attacking the report's treatment of President Biden's memory, and added, there is ample evidence from your interview that the president did well in answering your questions. And that's why we want the audio tapes. And we found out the transcripts were doctored. Like the uhs and the ums and the sorts of pauses and things that would have vocal inflections that would have suggested a cognitive issue were deleted from the transcript, according to the senior justice attorney responding to Judicial Watch's lawsuit. I mean, the transcript at the end says the following. Let me show you the transcript page here. Go to the bottom of the document. So that's the transcript, right? And you know, the transcript is transcribed by an official court reporter, so they've got a legal role in this process. Go down further to the last page. The certification. I hereby, DOJ, certify that the foregoing... Oh, it could go up a little bit more. I want to be sure that we got this covered. Okay, so there's the transcription, transcriber. Here it is. I certify that foregoing pages 1 through 44 are a true and correct transcript to the best of my ability. Well, that's not true. It wasn't a true and correct transcript to the best of my ability. Go down further, and the rest of the transcript, 45 through 155. Again, a true and correct transcript to the best. It's not true and correct. It was doctored. And that's why we just sued for any and all records of communications between any official employee of the DOJ and any official employee of the executive office of the president regarding the creation, editing, or release of the transcript interviews. And basically a version of that request to the responsible officials. So that's one federal lawsuit. We filed a second one for records about everything that Her had in terms of the basis for the report. So that would be a voluminous request. And then the third lawsuit was, what was the third lawsuit about? Oh, communications about the Her report with the Office of White House Counsel and Biden's personal lawyers. There's a cover-up. We want details of the cover-up. And let me be clear. Transcripts include every utterance by the person who's being deposed and people in the room. And that wasn't done for Biden. Nothing normal about it, and it's part of the cover-up, and this lawsuit aims to get at it. In the meantime, we're in court right now for the actual audios, and they're desperate to hide them from us. They filed a brief the other day. It was kind of crazy. You know, we've been doing this work at Judicial. We're coming up on our 30th anniversary, as I've mentioned, for Judicial Watch this month. I think it's July. I think the anniversary of our founding is the 29th, July 29th, so next week. And in all of our years here, I've never seen such a desperate, kind of unlawful approach to trying to hide a document that's subject to FOIA from us. Executive privilege. They said that the audio can be manipulated by AI and therefore shouldn't be released. That would just blow up FOIA. So they are really desperate to hide this information from us. And as I noted in the release, in my statement, the Biden Justice Department is engaged in a major league cover-up for Joe Biden, hiding audio recordings, altering transcripts, and ignoring FOIA shows the Biden team is desperate to avoid disclosure about his cognitive condition. So he's still president, and it still matters whether he's A, fit for office, but whether the Justice Department did the right thing and made the right conclusions in terms of justifying the decision to prosecute him, again, condoned by Garland, while charging Trump with similar crimes. Now, thankfully, those charges against Trump have been thrown out by Judge Cannon, as I disclosed earlier, or last week to you. But the abuse, the double standards, right? That's what we're aiming to get at. So I want to end with some good news. We have succeeded in ending a discriminatory program, an outrageously discriminatory program in San Francisco. We filed a taxpayer lawsuit. Taxpayers in California have the right to challenge illicit policies by government officials and to stop taxpayer money from being spent on them against San Francisco's so-called gift program, a program which provides payments to individuals based on their, I think they have to be black men identifying as women. So transgendered black men, if I recall correctly. There may be some other discriminatory requirements, but that's essentially the key part. And after we sued, magically the case is ended. And I talk about, or Judicial Watch talked about this case in a video we put out a few weeks ago. It's worth sharing with you because it's a great little video to educate you on the left's attack on the rule of law when it comes to race discrimination and their attack, well, actually their promotion of race discrimination and segregation and other anti-American values in violation of the Constitution and federal and state law. Let's go to that. Start running it.
Critical race theory, DEI, and other far-left ideas are part of an effort to divide and destroy America. Judicial Watch is a leader in exposing this woke madness spreading all over the country. We exposed records showing critical race theory being taught to cadets at West Point, so-called anti-racism training being forced on IRS employees, and we've gone to court to help teachers and parents abused for objecting to the radical left's political indoctrination of school children. We just filed a lawsuit in Oakland for records about a racially segregated playdate titled Playdate Social for Black, Brown, and API Families. This Oakland school segregated playdate shows how the extremist left is embracing anti-white segregation in our schools. And to make matters worse, the local public school district failed to produce records about this deplorable discrimination against school children. We also sued San Francisco to stop its discriminatory Guaranteed Income for Transgender People program. Under California's Constitution, everyone is supposed to be equal under the eyes of the law, and treating people differently based on race, sex, ethnicity, or transgender status is presumptively unconstitutional. Yet the radicals running San Francisco violated that provision with the GIFT program. Not only is the cash giveaway limited to transgender people only, but it grants preferences based on race, sex, and ethnicity. Persons who identify as black are given priority over persons who identify as white, Latino, or Asian. And men who identify as women are given priority over women who identify as men. After we sued to stop this blatantly unconstitutional program, San Francisco announced that it would stop the payments. This is what we are fighting against on behalf of Americans everywhere. And you can be sure Judicial Watch will continue to hold radicals accountable, because no one is above the law.
That's a good little video, huh? Well, there's a story in the California Globe confirming they shut it down. They tied it to our lawsuit. San Francisco officials confirmed that on Tuesday, this is dated July 24th, that the Guaranteed Income for Transgender People gift program, which gave guaranteed income to 55 low-income transgender residents for the last 18 months, would not be renewed due to both budget cuts and a number of lawsuits about the program. The program began in 2023 and was scheduled to end in June of this year with the hopes of a renewal. However, the program soon began to have legal trouble. Throughout 2023, multiple groups went after gift and other guaranteed income programs in the city. This led to, and we got the records. Judicial Watch uncovered the records about what they were doing, so we had an initial case. Judicial Watch opened a records request for the release of records from the city of San Francisco, showing the city prioritized tax money for Black and Latino transgenders for the gift program. With records now open, a lawsuit became inevitable. This led to Judicial Watch's filing a lawsuit in San Francisco Superior Court in January, challenging the gift program on behalf of 3 taxpayers. So gift is officially ended, you can see below. Unfortunately, it's wrapping up. There is not, unfortunately, money in this year's budget to continue that program. We're very focused right now on anti-trans homelessness and ensuring that we get trans folks into housing. So, just more unusual discriminatory interests there, but we'll see what that's about as well. But a nice little victory for Judicial Watch. I don't know how legally the case is going to end. But certainly the lawsuit helped end this program. And that's what it's about, right? There's been this radical attempt to kind of go past the boundaries that have been set in place, at least since the Federal Civil Rights Act laws of the 60s. The 14th Amendment requires equal protection under the law, and obviously the state constitutions have similar provisions. And they don't believe in that, the left doesn't. They want to discriminate. They want segregation. They want to divide the country by race because it advances their radical agenda to undo America. So we not only have this case about San Francisco, we have a lawsuit in Evanston, Illinois, challenging the reparations program. Reparations? We have a case in Minnesota where the public school district in Minneapolis has a contract with the union that when requires if layoffs are to happen, that people who are white get put in the front of the line for layoffs and people who are black are protected? Or minority populations or underrepresented groups, whatever the language they use, is racist. Purely racist, brazen discrimination. And of course, in California, we previously had successfully stopped 2 racial quota programs, or race, ethnicity, sex, LGBT quota programs, that required boards of directors to have quotas. I tell you, I don't know where we'd be without Judicial Watch, because they'd have all of this racial segregationist, ethnic segregationist, sexual segregationist quotas and other things all over the country. This reparations case, everyone's watching it because the left is desperate for reparations in order to redistribute income and destroy America. So these are all important cases. We had a nice little victory there, it looks like, in California, San Francisco. But as the old quote goes, eternal vigilance is the price of liberty. And with that, I wish you the best of all possible weeks. If you like what you're hearing here during this report, if you like what Judicial Watch is doing, our independent investigations into the assassination attempt, our work related to the 25th Amendment, our work related to Kamala Harris, our work related to election integrity, our work related to the Constitution, the rule of law, against the woke discrimination that wants to destroy America, then I encourage you to support Judicial Watch. Go to our website at judicialwatch.org and make a donation now. If you already are supporting us, thank you. But I encourage you to make another donation because the work never stops. And with that, I wish you the best, and I'll see you here next time on the Judicial Watch Weekly Update. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and like our video down below.